Welcome to Roasted, where we intentionally go against our button-up professional behavior to give you raw entertainment. I'm Kate.
And I'm David. Today, we'll be diving into a common assumption in small business marketing, the idea that quality customer service is your competitive advantage. Not necessarily.
Ooh, I love it. I love this topic. It's spicy already. If I had $1 for every small business that I've ever worked with, any entrepreneur that says great customer service is their differentiator, I could probably purchase my own Chick-fil-A franchise.
And you'd have a line wrapped around the building every single day except Sunday.
Yeah, exactly. But let's be real, unless you're Chick-fil-A, you probably need to rethink customer service being your competitive advantage. This topic really came out of it's not enough that customer service is your only competitive advantage. If you're providing just the expected service, granted, it feels like quality service, that is not a competitive advantage. By the way, have you seen Chick-fil-A? It has been a while, though. Their new cow mascot, they're rebranding. It's cartoony. I don't know how I feel about it.
I'll have to check it out.
I like the classic cows, if you ask me.
I mean, they Eat More Chicken has been doing numbers for years. I mean, okay. We're changing stuff. I think a really interesting thing about Chick-fil-A is that they just like nail consistency. So those chicken minis, whether you're in Louisville, Lexington, Little Rock, wherever else, the chicken minis are going to hit. You know, they're not just saying we have great customer service. They're actually delivering it at every touch point. If you're using the app, if you're in the drive-thru, if you're in the store. And we were talking about, before we hit record on the podcast, that certainly among the fast food set, they seem to be like one of the very few, if not the only chain, that when you go there and interact with people there, it actually seems like they're trying. They're kind of backing it up, and people are receiving it really well.
Yeah, I have to really, I love Wendy's, absolutely love Wendy's, but I have to have 45 minutes to go get my lunch minimum just to wait in the line at Wendy's.
Chick-fil-A would never do you like that.
No, absolutely not. Yeah, Wendy's, Chick-fil-A is our example because I think that they embody great quality customer service so well. Even their non-customers know just the phrase, our pleasure. It's so much more than great customer service. We could create a list as long as our arm of how they capitalize upon great customer service. Which brings us to what I wanted to talk about today. I think a lot of single location small businesses in particular kind of hang their hat on quality customer service. But I think the honest truth is service in general is not your competitive advantage. Even if you are the best in the business, best in the market, offering quality experiences, typically that's not enough to stay competitive and really stand the test of time.
Exactly. It's like, bragging that your restaurant serves food that doesn't make people sick, that the bar is basically on the floor.
Right. Is you met basic parameters. So I think this is even more important in today's day and age as behaviors are changing rapidly, especially over the last 20 years, where we see a stronger emphasis in buyers, consumers having a wealth of information to inform their decisions. Even how we define quality customer service has changed so much.
So let's break down why quality service on its own may not be the competitive advantage you think it is.
Service goes beyond just one interaction. Customers, buyers judge your business on every touch point that they have. From that initial search to passing your store, on the way home. This also includes the phone calls that they have, what your website looks like. Does it even function? Is your website fast enough? What does the invoice or kind of like the post-buying period look like? Even if one of those is inconsistent, your claim of customer service collapses.
And number two, your competitors are probably saying the same exact thing. We treat customers like family. We go above and beyond. It's not right until you're happy. Well, all of those things sound familiar because everyone's saying them. It's like being on a dating app where the profile says, I love to travel. I'm a foodie. I like dogs. Cool. So does everybody else.
Yeah. Ooh, I like that one. That's like, we'll make it right. Or like, we'll make sure that everything's perfect. And do you mean if you mess up my order or if you don't deliver on time that you're going to fix it? And that's the absolute bare minimum and honestly unacceptable if not. unacceptable beyond the experience. But if you aren't doing those things, you are most likely getting some type of groundswell across your digital presence. So bad reviews, comments on social that are continuing to hinder that level of quality customer service and consistency. So really the best way of catching those and kind of creating protection around this claim of customer service is be proactive and have great customer service.
So I took a class in college called Service Marketing with Martin Mundy. He was fascinating. He was talking about like experience design before that was like a thing, like in 2010. I will never forget him talking about like queue theory, how like at the grocery store, how there are like 5 lanes and you choose which lane to be in. So you can spend more time in that lane, but you don't blame Kroger, you blame yourself because you selected the lane. It was your choice. You had ownership over that lane. Versus something like Wendy's, where like Wendy's has a single line. You're in the queue. There's only one queue. So any amount of time you're waiting in that line, you're faulting Wendy's because there's no ownership over that decision. And I don't think that was a particularly unique concept, even when he was talking about it, but I was always fascinated with that. If you can make the customer own some piece of the process, they're willing to be forgiving because, they're literally a co-collaborator, in their experience.
Yeah, I really like that. I mean, like we were kind of talking about this morning when we were just chatting about Chick-fil-A is like if we go through, I don't know, McDonald's or something and we don't have to like question our existence because the people hate that we're there, like, great, I had a good experience. So literally, like, I love Wendy's. Wendy's has really good chicken nuggets, but you have to spend minimum 45 minutes in a Wendy's line if you want your food. And that's so frustrating. And you're right. I do blame Wendy's. Wendy's get better.
Rarely a day goes by where I don't learn something interesting from my colleagues. Today, I have clearly learned that Kate she's a Wendy's gal. And Wendy's better not play because I think you brought it up twice. Big Wendy's there.
When I love something, I'm all or nothing. Like the Wendy's die hard and it's so unhealthy, but that's how you know it's good is if I will go against what is healthy and I'm waiting. Time is the most valuable resource on the planet. So Wendy's must be really good if I'm spending a whole hour trying to get some food.
That's a mom of young child speaking right there. There you go.
My poor 3-year-old's like, Mom, can we leave? And I'm like, hey, gotta get those nuggets.
I'm confident that young man's pleased with the nuggets. Another thing, brands showing instead of telling. I remember that reframe from an English professor, show, don't tell. If quality service is plastered all over everything, but there's 0 proof points, programs, policies, certainly consumer reviews, to back up that you're meeting that mark, it's all just fluff. And I don't think there's a single thing that consumers are more adept at picking out than marketing fluff. They just can sense it in their bones, and it's just going to hurt your offering.
Yeah, you said like ding, ding, ding things I think about when I hear quality customer service that I would really like it. Again, it's not that customer service isn't your competitive advantage. It's what are the systems in place that you have to uphold and protect that as your competitive advantage. You said programs, policies. A really great example of this is instead of plastering all across your marketing great customer service, maybe you're promoting some type of feature benefit program that embodies customer service. Or how do you make someone really feel that consistency in between, say, like your showroom meeting with different salespeople? Maybe you have what is quality customer service to XYZ, insert our name, and it is a completely proprietary training program that goes above and beyond getting to know your product or your market. It's how we build and maintain relationships with people.
I can't remember if I've talked about this before, but I think something that's really interesting from a data collection standpoint that brands can take advantage of is, as a customer, we've all gotten tons of customer satisfaction surveys. They're like ubiquitous. Anytime you rent a car or go to Target or whatever it is. One of the things I've always found interesting about those surveys is that they will always evaluate your interaction with the frontline person, but very rarely, if ever, do they delve into, process or policy. And presumably from the brand standpoint, that makes sense because changing those or modifying those are time consuming and expensive. But a lot of the time, if you're having a customer service issue, it's actually the process. That's the problem. The person at the airport gate, is trying to do everything they can to get you rebooked or to correct the issue. But there's some, rule set, in their way. So I don't know, maybe an aside, but I've always found that to be a really interesting part of the service correction process is we're so obsessed with, did the person greet you with a smile? And it's like, well, sure they did, but that really doesn't mean much. I wanted my problem solved, or I wanted this to be a pretty efficient, frictionless process. And it just wasn't because, my particular case was just fringe enough to not cooperate with the system. So, I think that's a massive opportunity. People who can integrate some of those things in their surveys. I think, sometimes when you're a customer and when you're not being asked that question, it's almost like, oh, you don't really care. You're not really interested in how this experience was. You just want to tap that you asked your customers what they thought, but you're not really going to do anything concrete. Or God forbid this person has a bad day and gets fired,
It's like you just want the benefits of those mediocre, like the good reviews because you've asked surface level questions. Like you want to benefit from it, but you're not willing to do the work in order to change that. I think that's a keyword there alone is framing the customer experience as just, was it to someone's satisfaction? Do you stay in a relationship because you're satisfied, or do you stay in a relationship because it's amazing, it's in love, it's, going above and beyond all of your needs? So that's really where we want to be. Or I even think, like, what systems could you put in place that are void of humans that represent and reflect what it's like to have a quality customer service experience with a human? So like you use the airlines. Is that essentially before I get to the counter with 100 other people on my flight, I've, got to get home for Christmas or whatever? Is that we've built some type of system and algorithm that serves recommended flight options? Even something as crazy and unbelievable of what if we capitalize on something like Google Flights and we're Delta, but we're giving you recommendations for American, airlines as an alternative for how to get home.
I think there's got to be a generational piece at play because if I have an issue, I'm a caller. I call. And I'm 36, so I'm not prepared to call 36 old. But I'd be interested. Are you a caller? Do you chat? Do you send emails? Or do you call?
Yeah, it really depends, honestly, on where I am in the buying process. So if I'm a huge proponent, and this even goes with different vendors, I think this is a huge portion of my job, is advocacy for our clients. Like if we're working with a strategic partner, same deal if I'm a customer that's bought something, I need to get what was promised to me. And that is not me being a rude customer. Obviously, we do this, in very nice ways, eloquently. But I paid for a service. This is what I was promised. So yeah, I'm going to call and tell. Unfortunately, what I feel like is often the experience for folks is that you have to keep following up and hounding someone. Like we recently purchased a new mattress and a box spring. There was an issue with the box spring when it was delivered.
Nightmare.
Right.
Nightmare.
And so I had to call for literally 5 days in a row. Of course, they used some independent third party to deliver. So it had to go from dispatch to my salesperson. My salesperson doesn't care because they've made the sale. And so I'm just bumped around. And then finally, I keep following up, but they keep pushing back the date of when we're going to get a new one. So there's really, would I ever purchase something from this organization again? Would I ever recommend this experience? Absolutely not. To some degree, you can't control if there's an issue with a product, or even I get your outsourcing issue with a delivery, but there has to be strong accountability in your systems and in your training if you're going to promise quality customer service. So to answer your question, maybe yes, phone call, or I'll drop off.
Yeah, we're hearing so much about integrating AI, and I worry. I wonder. I think I'm more wonder than worry whether we exercise restraint and where we deploy those tools. Because I think if you've had an issue and you're met with an AI agent, it's like, okay, you kind of recognize it. I think, well, I don't know. Some of those voice technologies are getting pretty convincing. But I think especially in like a chat context, you can kind of tell it's a real person or if it's just a robot. And I think that can be really frustrating for someone who's already had like some sort of service delivery issue. If you're trying to correct the mattress issue and, you have to spend 20 minutes talking to a robot, like you're not going to be pleased. You want to talk to a person who can, understand and kind of jump through the bureaucratic hurdles to fix whatever problem you have. And, the mattress story is interesting.
This is like a whole other episode, but is a point of pride for me of like, I could give you strong tips for how to get around AI, like customer experience. So as a huge part of advocacy, like through my career or working with different softwares, platforms, tools, whatever, like I know how the quickest possible way to talk to a human, because sometimes it's near impossible. The most infuriating to me that will take me like 0 to 100 is when those little call directories take you into an infinite loop. That is so common. On that, did you see, I sent you yesterday, CallRail released like their voice assistant, their AI that claims like 24/7 great customer service as like this amazing alternative to a phone directory. But they essentially said, 44% average increase in answered calls, which I think is interesting for what claims to be, 24/7 service. But I would love to test that.
I think this goes into like, this is like a callback to our discussion about mystery shopping, because I think executives really are truly well served to test their own systems. A call loop, someone in that organization realizes there's a call loop that maybe they're unable to, flag it high enough in the chain to correct it. And I think there's that famous story from Amazon where they were getting their support lines or the help line, the metrics were really good, but there was some other indicator in their data that there was a problem with that process, and so they literally paused the meeting and they called the support line. Like I think Jeff Bezos is on the phone with his own support line and realizes that the wait's just like totally unacceptable, and that's not at all meeting that customer centricity ethos that he's all about. So I think that's super interesting.
Yeah. I mean, I'm no Jeff Bezos, but I know you and I have done that on several occasions, and client meetings, prospect meetings, like internal meetings. We'll be like, well, we're talking about it. Let's actually know what that experience is. Is it a problem? Could it be improved?
And I think that goes back to the core issue here is, customer service could be, but often isn't your competitive advantage, because maybe, when you created the process, it worked really well. When you had time to really oversee and train, it worked really well, but time has passed and kind of all things can unfortunately decay. So, it may have been true 2 months ago, but it's not true today. So you got to invest time, effort, and energy to get back where it needs to be. So what did you focus on instead?
Yeah. Let's talk about, you want your customer service to be your competitive advantage. And what I'll preface with the want is there has to be a strong fit for your industry. Like I'd say, of course, any service industry, you need to have a good customer service. Again, whole other episode about fit regarding different competitive advantages for how you need, not want to differentiate yourself. But let's assume a great fit for your industry, great fit for your positioning. How should someone uphold great customer service as a competitive advantage?
So what do? Here's the framework. Ask yourself these 3 questions, and for the love of God, be honest. What do we offer that our competitors don't? Don't make an assumption here. Go and test your competitors. Call them, email them, visit in person. Don't let yourself off easy on this one. The next, number 2, where can we exceed customer expectations consistently? Is this something that we can implement on day 1 and carry forward to day 4,000? Or is it something that we might just blip on? Again, be honest with yourself here. I would involve your employees and executive team here. It's easy from high in the ivory tower to implement some kind of rule or expectation, but the front line ultimately has to execute that expectation consistently into infinity. So let's make sure that it actually works. And finally, number 3, how do we show proof instead of just writing checks we can't necessarily cash?
I have a question. Don't hate me for this. So what happens if you have to be very honest with yourself, you don't do anything different than your competitors, specifically on the customer service side.
Yeah, sometimes it'd be like that.
Say,
I think it's an Ogilvy book, one of the Ogilvy books. He talks about marketing for milk, and it's like milk is milk is milk, right? So how do you differentiate when you're like in kind of like a commodity space? And that's like a branding opportunity. I think that's like an excuse, to be like, there's nothing really that differentiates us. Like, yeah, there is. How many different kinds of gas stations have you been to in the past 12 months? Like Speedway, Gordon's, Costco Gas, Kroger Fuel. You've been to a bunch of them, but like they feel different. If I'm going to a Speedway versus going to a Costco, like that's different. And it feels different. And I would certainly, I'm certainly willing to go out of my way, and navigate, this horrendous Hamburg traffic and sunny Lexington, to get to that Costco versus literally just going down the street, to the Speedway. I'm willing to engage in the commute because the experience is just going to be better. So, I think we create a lot of shortcuts and potential excuses for ourselves, especially when things get hard, especially when we're in situations that require introspection, or situations where, we might not be, we want to believe that we're the top dog, but maybe we're not. But if you want to improve and you're really committed to doing the thing and being the best at it, then get going. There's really no way to cheat it.
Yeah, I think you can start small. Instead of saying we provide quality customer service, look at a program, something that you're already doing. Even if your competitors are also doing it, you are the first person to claim this. You're the only person to claim this. We guarantee same day appointments, or your service is free, or even without your service is free. Maybe there's no consequence to that not happening, but saying we offer, overnight delivery, or you have a team of experts at your disposal. And then when you come in, you're assigned your typical salesperson, but then you're also assigned, a specialist and some type of other representative that champions customer service.
A lot of the things that you just mentioned there relate to speed. And I think that's a really good place to start. The tempo with which you operate, if you're not a big box store, they're all focusing on, turning their brick and mortar locations into mini distribution centers so that they can enable, same day or next day delivery to 90% of the United States. So it's kind of like the Amazonification of everything, where we expect next day delivery, we expect it to be free, and that's just the way it is. So I think when you're, working with your team and thinking about number two, where can we exceed customer expectations consistently? You may need to set the bar kind of high and see if you can execute it. One example, answering the phone in, 2 rings or less. That might sound daunting on the front end, but I think you have to hold yourself to that high standard, because if you don't, someone else will. And that's the beauty of the market economy. That's the beauty of competition. That, if you're not going to take it seriously and put forth your level best effort, then someone else will.
Yeah, I like that as a concept. Instead of claiming great customer service, break down the key pillars of what makes great customer service. So speed and timeliness, accessibility, listening, problem solving, and solutions. I think owning that space will help challenge you and at the same time deliver on customer service if it should be your competitive advantage.
So to wrap it up, service is critical, but it may not be the competitive advantage you think it is. Unless you're Chick-fil-A with waffle fries, peach milkshakes, and chicken minis, great service might not win you the market share that you'd like.
And please, Wendy's marketing team, if you're listening, please improve your customer service so I can get more nuggets.
Do something. Dave, shout out Dave. That's it. That's the roast. Thanks for listening.
Ready to get real results? Visit hightondigital.com.